Welcome back to Board Game Closet. I'm Rod,
I'm Tim.
and today we are reviewing Temple of Elemental Evil, Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition.
All right, and first we're going to pull out all the components. Let's see what comes in the box.
All right, here are the components, and first thing you'll notice that there's a lot of pieces to it. Tons of pieces, very much reminiscences, or whatever.
Reminiscent.
It reminds me of the other three games a ton. The one thing that I did notice when it came to the miniatures and so on, is that they seem to be a little smaller, I would say. I think the scale's a little bit smaller than they were before. And none of the pieces are as grand as like the dragon from Chardalon, or even the dragon from the what was the other game that we have there? Ravenloft. Yeah, Ravenloft, exactly. So the pieces themselves are a little smaller. Detail's fantastic on them. The plastic itself is fine with it. You'll have a bunch of dungeon tiles. You have several different types of dungeon tiles, from the double to the single. You'll also have, again, the cards for all the player characters, and basically the tiles. They're a good size. As you can see, they're two-sided, so if you go up to second level and so on. And then the cards themselves will give you basically your abilities and so on, and the traps that you meet up with. And of course, you get a 20-sided die and tons of instructions. The artwork is fantastic. The overall quality is very, very good again. I would say that the only thing that I would have any problems with this set, because you do get a lot of things, is that the miniatures, to me, do seem a little smaller. But other than that, it's just fantastic.
I think they went with a lot more like medium-sized creatures, because you got your different elementals and your like I guess it's an Eton here, or Eaton, however you want to say it. So you won't have as many like large ones. Like this dragon is obviously smaller than the Chardalon one. So, but altogether, I think it's the same amount of plastic.
And I think, with all the pieces that you actually do get with the game, I mean, with all the tokens and everything, I mean, Wizards of the Coast does a great job on this, that you have plenty of material to work with. You're not running out of stuff at all.
In this game, like the other D&D board games, comes with two books, the adventure book and the rule book. The rules will give you all the basic rules for playing the game, and it organizes it pretty well. It always does this in these games, where it's got this great bold text so you can tell what section you need to go to. And the pictures, this is always a big point for instruction booklet, is that they have pictures where they're talking about the different subjects, so that you can actually visualize what they're talking about. Of course, the adventure booklet here, it's well done because the setups it's intuitive. So when you go to set up an adventure, you know what you're doing from point to point. You're not ever confused, which is great, because when you first pull out all these tiles, you get kind of overwhelmed, because there's just a lot of pieces here, a lot of different symbols and whatnot on here. But luckily, with the rule book and the adventure book, it starts you off small, lets you learn the different things. Yeah, the only thing in here that actually got me here was building the decks that you get, the advanced decks. I skipped over it because I was used to the other board games and it didn't have that advanced deck option in here, so I just kind of whizzed right past it. But so make sure that when you're playing this, that you realize this is 5th edition, not 4th edition, and that they've added a couple of mechanics and whatnot to the board game. So make sure you check that out. Let's just skim through it at least once to get all the things. So now let's talk about how it's played. But basically, it goes through, it's the hero phase, the exploration phase, and the villain phase. The hero phase is just where you're going to be able to take your actions. You're going to move and do one of your special actions. And you have a list of them. You have like at will, okay. You have dailies, and you have encounter ones. Basically, the daily and the encounters are more likely going to be flipped over one use until you find some way to refresh them. The at-wills will be ones that you can use repeatedly. That's not much change from the 4th edition one. After that, if you're on an exploration zone, which is basically a square that's next to an open space for the next tile, you pull a tile and place it down here with the arrows pointing towards your open square. The whole point of this is to put new tiles on because you're exploring the dungeon. It has icons on here for the monsters. That's where you're going to add the monsters. They have a monster deck. You just draw off of it. It tells you what monster to put in it. You are now the person that controls those monsters. So every time it's your turn, those monsters also move. Then after exploration phase is the villain phase. This one is the big one because if the villain is out, he's going to be moving around on every single person's turn. So it makes kind of him like quite a baddie for your dungeon here. Also, this is the first part. Like if you didn't explore, this is where you draw a what's it called, encounter card.
Right.
So that way, if you didn't explore and check out the dungeon, it's like, hey, here's something that's happening, and it keeps the game moving, so you're not just stagnant. And usually about 90% of the time, encounter cards are horrible. They're just out there to throw traps down on you or something like that. So that's not necessarily something you want. Of course, if you get a black triangle when you search, you get the encounter card anyways. So it's a give and take there. So it's kind of a pressure lock in that respect. Like, well, I won't explore this time because I don't want any more monsters. But let's take the encounter. The good thing is, as you beat monsters, you gain experience points based on the value of the monster.
Which is a big help.
Right, and then you can spend 5 of that to just buy off the encounter, so it doesn't actually happen. So your whole team can kind of play with that because that's the whole team's pool of experience points. Right. Then lastly, the big part about it is when you're playing through the adventure booklet, it's a campaign. So the gold that you earned in the dungeon now works towards buying your levels and stuff. So before, and this is a big change, before you had to earn the level as you went through the dungeon. Like you went up to second level during the dungeon. If you didn't make it, then because you had to expend your experience points for it. But now you can buy it with the gold in between missions, which is great.
Right.
I think that really helps you with buying off the encounters. 'Cause some of these encounters are pretty deadly.
Especially when you get a bunch of them out there at the same time, and they can build up very quickly.
Yes.
So the game itself, if you're familiar with the first 3 games, it's very, very similar. I mean, in this sense, right? Just bringing in some of the new addition rules. All in all, I think that the couple things that I felt was that it's refined more than the other 3. But I felt that in all these games, all 4 of them have gotten
Better as they went.
yeah. I mean, because each level. I mean, the first one was kind of rough. It just seemed like you couldn't do anything before you were dead. Everything was on top of you. But they've played this one out really well, and it's well balanced.
Yeah, those first ones like kind of felt like, hey, don't bunch up, don't stay together.
Right.
Like you split up and go all different
Right.
directions, or otherwise these traps will kill your entire party.
Exactly.
And that's what it felt like.
And and then the new traps in this are really nice too. They don't take up the second and third one they took up the whole square, and they would affect everything in that square. So basically the tile. I mean, now they hit the square that they're in. That's
Yeah.
what mostly just affect that portion of it.
And then also the traps, there's these little X's. I don't know if you can see it on the camera from there, but there's these little X's. So when you explore a tile and you see that, they're actual like little trap tokens that go on there. They may not be anything, but you can actually spend your action to check that out to see it to disarm the trap, which is really cool.
And this one, like you're saying, the scenario based and everything. Some of this will take place outside also.
Yeah, if you flip this over, you can see there's like a town zone as well.
So there's a more of an adventure feel to this one versus the other one, instead of just being in a dungeon.
Yeah. The big 5th edition rule change here too is advantage and disadvantage, where you get, if you're familiar with 5th edition, you get the advantage in some circumstances, which means you roll 2 dice to take the best. Disadvantage is you roll 2 dice to take the worst. So that's a nice mechanic that got kicked in there. And then lastly is, like I was talking about earlier, is the advanced deck. As you move through, you gain better monsters and better treasures and items from the deck that gets added in as you play through the campaign.
The story just seems better. I don't know if it's so much the story, but it just seems to be well written. So when we read off that first part of it, it really felt like we were really starting to hit into the Dragons game, from the old school days. So
It's probably because I read it better.
exactly.
I had my DM voice down.
And this is a really good game for one person to be kind of the. He's not the dungeon master, obviously, but he's kind of the one that's keeping us all in check and stuff. Make sure that we're following through with with sequence of events and that type of thing.
Yeah. Well, you want to give this a rating?
Let's do it.
So how we usually do this is we give it 1 of 3 dice. We give it a green, which means go buy it, play it, we loved it. You can give it a white, which means we played it if it was out there. We didn't really hate it or love it, really. And then there's a red, we hated it, don't play it, we would never touch the game.
All right.
Are you ready for this?
I'm ready for it.
Two
2 greens.
So why don't you tell us why you gave it a green?
Well, I enjoyed the first 3. I thought they were good games, and I saw problems with them. And this game seems to have balanced all those problems out. So I thoroughly enjoyed this. I like the theme, I like the miniatures. I mean, the tokens, all this stuff is well done. I don't see really anything on here with this game that's disadvantaged. Price is good because you can pick this depending on where you're purchasing it, but you can get as low as about $45. So $45 with all this stuff, that's a pretty good buy. There's enough scenarios to keep you interested in the game, so there's tons of things to do. I think it's just a very, very good game. Love it.
I gave it a green because this one actually did improve on the other ones, which was impressive because the other ones are good games. They're good board games, just solid fundamentals and stuff. This one improved. It made the campaign feel more like a campaign, like in D&D, because your characters are actually progressing, keeping stuff. More because you feel like they're progressing as they go along instead of having to start back at first level and then earn it back with the experience points as it goes on. And plus with these elementals and stuff, you get to see cooler monsters more often instead of just constantly slugging through like the little minions and stuff. Now you get to see like the elemental from the temple and stuff like that. Even though there's not that one big grand one that keeps coming out like a Chardalon that just tries to wipe your whole party real quick as he travels down the hallways. But so that's our review of Temple of Elemental Evil. You hear what we thought about it. So go check us out on Facebook and on Twitter and YouTube. And as always,
Support your local hobby shop.
All right, so as you heard throughout this review, we talked about these other D&D board games. If you're interested in those, we did that review and click somewhere in the screen, hopefully below my finger. Jimmy, you know what you're supposed to do here on the editing. Down here, this is where it should be, somewhere along here. Maybe in Rod's face.